Welcome to my channel. I am Daisy, your hostess. You are in my book playlist. And in this video, we continue on with the book titled Through Constructive Thinking by Emmet Fox. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Glad you found us. And to our subscribers, welcome back. Hopefully you're enjoying this book. And like I've said before in the previous videos, this book has its foundation in the Bible. And so we see that in these few first chapters, the author has taken us through some of the most beautiful Psalms and has broken it down to give us a different perspective on what the words mean in a very scientific philosophy and down-to-earth way, where we could see this, that if we do consume, and I like to use that word consume because the author did use the word treatment. And when you're not feeling well, when you're sick, when you don't know where to turn, you need treatment. As if you were sick and bad, you need medicine. And where do we go? Where do you go to get spiritual treatment? Where do you get treatment for the soul when you're going through the darkest times of your life, when you are depressed, when you're hurting, when there is nothing out here that's going to help you? Because at the end, the food could be put in front of you, but if you don't make the effort to take and consume it, and will never receive it to heal you. And so I believe that it is the same with the tools to grow the spirit and spirituality. Some people use the tools that are offered through their religious base. Some people use the tools that offer through life experiences. Some people are very connected with nature and can feel and have these senses awakened to know that there is something greater. And then don't know where to find this and don't know how. And they're looking for that way. While this book may be of a religious base, and if you are not, I would encourage you to put aside the notion that this may be making any reference of any religion and just take it for what the tools may be. Now think about this. My takeaway from the chapter that we just finished reading, which was Light and Salvation, was when the author said that God always acts through us by changing our consciousness. So just taking that and just saying, and if you don't believe in God, but are looking to cultivate and looking for more meaning, then just think on this. And if it makes sense to you. If I am here consuming a dialogue with someone that is talking about depression, talking about anguish, talking about strife and lack and limitation, and I'm also worried, and instead of me seeing the solution, now I'm also looking at how deeper the problem is for me. My mind is getting filled with more negativity, more darkness, more doom and despair. Now, what if I was, sitting across someone that was empowering me and encouraging me and talking about the opportunities and showing me all the good things that have come through the experience that I was going, and how those were really setting me as the foundation so that I could become stronger for the next great thing that was going to happen in my life. My conversation and the consciousness would be totally different. And that's where I would say that as we fill our cup to overflow with things that empower us, enlighten us, and let us see that the journey is not one of doom, but one of growth, and that no muscle training exercise is free of pain, then we get to understand that the little discomfort that we feel through an experience that might be heavy on us is one that is only helping us develop these extra strength so that we can endure and get through and overcome chapters of our lives that are heavy. And that's something that you might want to consider when these books show up that may seem of a religious base. It's not about the religion. It's about the question. As an explorer, as I invite you, golden nugget can I get out of this book? What great knowledge can the great universe give me that I can use that help me on my next project, on my next adventure? And when we do that, guess what? Those golden nuggets will show up. And so my takeaway from the section titled Life and Salvation is the statement that God always acts through us by changing our consciousness. And so changed from a place within and not from a place without. And that kind of change is the change that allows us to continue to grow. With that, I'm not going to expand any further. Thank you for joining me today, and let's turn the page to the next section. Power Through Constructive Thinking by Emmet Fox. This book is in the public domain. Section titled The Everlasting Gates. 1. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. 2. For he hath founded it upon the seas and established it upon the floods. 3. Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord? Or who shall stand in his holy place? 4. He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. 5. He shall receive the blessing from the Lord, and righteousness from the God of his salvation. 6. This is the generation of them that seek him, that seek thy face, O Jacob, Selah. 7. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lift up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. 8. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. 9. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, even lift them up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. 10. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts, he is the King of glory, Selah. The Everlasting Gates, Psalm 24. All through the Bible, we are taught that the demonstration of harmony, that is, health, prosperity, and happiness, is God's will for man, because until he has attained all-round harmony, man is not expressing God, and to express God is his destiny. The 24th Psalm is the great summing up of the Bible teaching on this subject. In the unique Bible idiom, it explains harmony, which is the true meaning of salvation, and it analyzes in a masterly fashion, as only the Bible can, the causes that produce harmony. In its literary form, the psalm is a magnificent prose poem in 5 stanzas. The first verse constitutes a concise and, at the same time, exhaustive statement of the great metaphysical law. Let us consider what it really says, or in other words, let us translate the technical terms employed into the common phraseology of modern life. The opening verse from one of the best-known phrases in the scriptures. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. These words are constantly quoted on all sorts of occasions, but the context in which they are used seldom gives evidence of any spiritual understanding of their true import. At worst, I have seen them used as an attempt at consolation in the face of death or of great financial misfortune. The implication seems to be that, as everything belongs to God, he is entitled to destroy whatever he pleases without consulting the feelings of mankind. At best, they are taken in the sense of pious, but rather vague recognition of God as the general source of our supply. Of course, even the vaguest recognition of this primary fact is better than no recognition at all, but unless we get a definite scientific understanding of the meaning underlying the words, we shall derive no real profit from them. To suppose that God, the great source, substance itself, could cause or even endorse death or misfortune is the deadly error that lies at the root of all our troubles. And it is characteristic of the carnal mind thus to pervert a text which, above most others in the Bible, explains the real law of life and prosperity. This carnal mind, as Paul calls it, is of course nothing but our own restricted and ignorant manner of thinking. To be ignorant of the laws of life or to misunderstand them cannot, it is true, change those laws. But it can and does cause us suffering and deprivation of every kind, even to the death belief itself, until such habits of thought are corrected. The key to the true meaning of this first stanza is found in the two pivotal words, Lord and earth. And here, at the very beginning, we must pause and ask ourselves what we mean by the Lord. God, of course, we will say, and that is true, but in the Bible, the word Lord, as a rule, means God in the special sense of our own indwelling Christ, our own true identity, the divine spark, the I am. So this verse states, once and for all, that the earth, which, as we know, is a general term covering all our expression or manifestation, is under the jurisdiction of the I am. Now, all trouble of every kind really arises from the belief that the earth is subject to the dominion of some outer power or law which is able to govern it independently of the I am, or to destroy it altogether. But the law of being is that man is the image and likeness of God and has full dominion over all his conditions, all of them. And our psalm emphasizes this wonderful fact by adding the world and they that dwell therein. Our earth, which is our world, down to every detail of our lives, is really under our own dominion and is made and unmade by our word. For he hath founded it upon the seas and established it upon the floods. Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord? Or who shall stand in his holy place? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. The hill of the Lord, or his holy place, means the realization of God. It is that vivid, real sense of the presence, that wonderful experience of security and joy that is truly the peace that passeth all understanding. When one attains to this, he knows indeed that all is well, and that nothing can by any means hurt him. At such times, too, he has a marvelous power of helping and healing others. This state of mind is really the one thing that is worth possessing, for having that, one has all, and lacking that, he has nothing. To reach this state is the real object of all our prayers and treatments. It is nothing less than the dominion that we are promised in Genesis, and here the Bible impresses this truth upon us, and also instructs us how we are to get it. It is indeed a holy place because nothing defiled in any way can reach us there. Sickness, poverty, and sin cannot enter. That is to say, we cannot feel that such things are real while we are in this state of mind. And as soon as we feel that they are not real, they disappear into nothingness. The inspired writer then goes on to tell us how we are to raise ourselves into this wonderful consciousness, and it is splendid to note that he makes a point of affirming that it is founded upon the seas and established upon the floods. This means that people like ourselves with all sorts of limitations and difficulties are the very people for whom the promise is intended, and that in spite of all our shortcomings, we may reach it too. For it is founded upon the waters, and water is always the human soul as we know it, subject as we are only too sadly aware to storms, floods, and sometimes even typhoons. So we see that there is not the slightest reason to be discouraged merely because one's present demonstration seems to be very poor and spiritual power seems entirely lacking. It does not matter, because the high consciousness is built upon just such stormy seas as this. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can the floods drown it. Having thus indicated, as the Bible does on almost every page, that God's salvation is for anybody and everybody. The wayfaring man, though a fool, shall not err therein. It goes on in its usual practical way to explain exactly how the thing is to be done. It says that for the great task, we require clean hands and a pure heart, and that we must not lift up our souls to vanity, nor swear deceitfully. These instructions are certainly definite, and it will pay us to study them in some detail. First, in logical order, comes the need for a pure heart. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. I suppose it is only lifelong familiarity with this statement that blinds us to its staggering importance. Just try to realize for a moment the thing that is said here. They shall see God. Think what that must mean, and think whether any price could be too much to pay for that experience, to see God. Well, the Bible promises that on certain terms, the wayfaring man, you and I, may see God. Of course, you will understand that there is no question of seeing God with the physical eyes as one sees a man or a house. With the physical eyes, one can see only physical things, and God is spirit, and spiritual things have to be spiritually discerned. Also, spiritual perception is not a matter of apprehending outlines and surfaces as physical sight is. Spiritual perception is direct spiritual experience in which the subject and the percipient become one. Therefore, to see God means, as far as our restricted and crippled human speech can express the thing at all, a realization of perfect essential unity with divine goodness. But who are the pure in heart? In the Bible use of the term, the words pure and purity are not confined to physical purity. Absolutely essential as that is, they are expanded to include freedom from every kind of error and limitation. Now, all error arises from a belief in the possibility of a cause other than God, and so fundamentally, purity means complete loyalty to the belief in one single, all-embracing, omnipotent cause, which is utterly good. God, our Father, which art in heaven. To believe in God as the only cause, and absolutely to reject any claim for a lesser cause of any kind. To refuse to concede the power of causation to such things as climate, germs, man-made medical laws, or laws of poverty or decay. To refuse to concede reality to the race limitations of time and space, and, in the face of appearances, to judge righteous judgment and hold unswervingly to the one cause. This is purity. In the Bible, the heart usually stands for what we call the subconscious mind, and it is our subconscious mentality that we have to redeem and purify. To keep one's mentality consciously loyal to the one power is only half the battle, though it is the first and therefore the more important half. The other half is to purify and re-educate the subconscious from the errors which have accumulated there in the course of time. If we do this work faithfully, we shall sooner or later arrive at the point where we really have a pure heart in the full Bible sense, and then we shall see God. Jesus had reached this stage when he said, "The prince of this world cometh and findeth nothing in me," meaning that his subconsciousness was so purified that no limitation thoughts could have any effect upon him, although at one time he was in all points tempted like as we are. This purifying of the soul, not merely from the grosser sins which everybody recognizes, but from the 1,001 concessions to limitation belief that fill the everyday life of humanity, is the one and only pathway to freedom. It is a wonderful beginning when we accept the spiritual basis of the allness of God. But it is only when we have begun to apply this truth in every practical detail of our lives, day after day, when we are not in the humor to do so as well as when we are, that we really begin to get results. This is to have clean hands. The hand is always the power of manifestation or expression, and unless our expression, our all-day thinking is clean, that is to say, spiritual and true, we have not clean hands, and we cannot expect to ascend that wondrous hill of the Lord. This wonderful lesson receives its emphasis by repetition in a slightly different form, as in the Hebrew literary tradition. So we are told that the redeemed, or saved, is he who does not give his soul unto vanity. Another way of saying one who does not look for his happiness to manifestation instead of to cause, or believe in more causes than the one. To swear deceitfully is to pin your faith to error, to have a real conviction, as so many people have, that evil is true. He shall receive the blessing from the Lord, and righteousness from the God of his salvation. This is the generation of them that seek him, that seek thy face, O Jacob. Selah. To many it may seem that the purification of the heart, or the redemption of the subconscious, will be a long and wearisome task. But we have to remember that when we pray, it is God who works and not we, and that tasks difficult or impossible to us present no difficulty to him. If you will use the power of the word to declare that God is purifying you, that God is setting you free, that God is inspiring and enlightening you, you will be amazed how seemingly impossible difficulties will be overcome, how old habits of thinking will fall away and new ones come in. And this is because you will receive your righteousness or right thinking from God. You have sought his face, and under the great law, you must begin to express something of his nature, for we always grow like unto that which we contemplate. Here the expression, O Jacob, means, O God of Jacob. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lift up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, even lift them up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts, he is the King of glory, Selah. This is the third stanza of the poem. Is a glorious statement of the power of prayer. It is not exaggerating to say that it is probably the most glorious tribute to the power of prayer ever written. Gates and doors always symbolize understanding. A little thought will show the good logic of this. The gate or door is the place where we pass in or out of a city, in or out of a house or a field, from one room to another, and so forth. In other words, it marks a change of consciousness. The place that you are in at any moment is really the state of consciousness which you have at the moment. And what we know as movement through space from one place to another, from Europe to America, or from the dining room into the drawing room, is really a partial change of consciousness. Of course, the only change of this kind which has any true value is the absolute change brought about by an increase in the understanding of truth. And every time that we do gain such an increase, we enter a fresh stage upon the path. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, is a dramatic way of telling us that it is only by the attainment of a higher degree of understanding that the King of glory, the vivid realization of God which we are seeking, can come to our souls. The gates and doors are told to lift up their heads, that is to say, to become loftier. In order that there may be no possible room for any misunderstanding of the mighty import of the message, we are then told to ask ourselves who the King of glory is, and for what he stands. And it is impressed upon us that he is nothing less than the Lord, and that he is strong and mighty in battle. Not just a figurehead potentate, but a man of war. And the battle he fights, of course, is our battle for the overcoming of sin, sickness, and death. The poet concludes with the reaffirmation that the power we contact in prayer is the Lord of hosts, which is the Bible term for the aspect of God as power. These Bible treatments are not mere literary exercises. They are definite methods for bringing about a change in consciousness. That means that it is of very little use merely to read one of them through hurriedly and then put it aside. A treatment such as this psalm should be read over slowly, many times. As you read, you should pause frequently to become receptive for a moment in order to give a chance for inspiration to come through. Do not make these pauses too long. Pause for an instant, long or short, according to whether you are slow or a quick thinker, and then, if nothing comes, continue reading. Always when reading the Bible, put in between the lines, so to speak, the thought that God is inspiring you. This is the way to get direct illumination on the Bible teaching at first hand. Remember that other people's interpretations of the Bible, however helpful and stimulating they may be, can never be as valuable as those that you get for yourself. The Bible will give you new and wonderful knowledge, having a direct bearing upon your own personal and private problems and difficulties. If only you will make that possible by adopting the right attitude of mind. When your usual methods of treating a problem do not seem to be bringing results, it is a good plan to discontinue them altogether for a time and to work exclusively for inspiration instead. This can be done by opening the Bible at random and reading whatever text your eyes fall upon. If the first page opened does not interest you, try elsewhere and continue to do so until you do find something that gives you a new light. Note carefully, however, that it is a change in consciousness that you are now seeking, a change that will enable you to pray more freshly and effectively and to be more sensitively receptive. You are not now seeking precise practical instructions. Do not take the wording of any text literally as a direction for conduct, as such a practice easily ends in superstition. It is the letter of the Bible that killeth, the spirit that giveth light. End of section. We will now move to the next section, titled Daniel in the Lion's Den. The story of Daniel in the lion's den is one of the half-dozen best-known stories in the Bible. I imagine there are very few people who have not heard it. It is a particular favorite with the children, and children are great judges of literary and dramatic power, as everyone knows who has ever tried to entertain one of them with a story. Now we learn from the Jesus Christ teaching that there is no such thing as chance. Everything happens in accordance with the law of cause and effect. And therefore, when a story or a legend is found to have a worldwide circulation, and when that circulation continues generation after generation, we know that it must contain something of great importance to humanity. So it is with the story of Daniel's great demonstration. It contains within it a wonderful lesson in the truth of being. And for all these centuries, it has helped and comforted millions of people, even though they did not have the scientific key to its meaning. Let us now consider in a little detail some of the principal points of the story as it is given in the 6th chapter of Daniel. We are told that Daniel was made what would be called nowadays Chancellor or Chief Secretary of State under Darius. This was a position of great honor and responsibility, but also one involving great personal danger to the holder. One could not occupy such an office without making many powerful enemies, and in that ancient Oriental world, they were apt to make short work of inconvenient officials in high places, more particularly when the incumbent was a foreigner. The sword or dagger, poison administered in food, and even though wearing apparel such as gloves or boots were freely employed in such cases, and above all, political intrigue was used to bring the obnoxious official to his end. In the case of Daniel, we are told that a carefully engineered plot was carried through, which placed his patron Darius in the position of being absolutely helpless to save Daniel. Such plotters would take the character of the monarch into account when laying down their plans. A small-minded, jealous man would be handled in one way, a religious fanatic in another. Darius, who was neither of these things, but an intellectual formalist of a rigid type, was trapped in his own weakness. Daniel was arrested, taken down to a pit of lions, and thrown in. Such a pit of wild animals was sure to be found near most eastern palaces of those days, the animals being required partly for display and partly, as in the present instance, to furnish terrifying examples of political punishment. Daniel, however, instead of being promptly torn to pieces, remained untouched, and in due course was liberated from the lion's den without so much as a scratch. Spiritually understood, this is one of the greatest lessons in the Bible. Daniel is every man. The story of his great tribulation is the story of any difficulty that can come into your life or into mine. Incidentally, it is the story of the whole of your human experience in general, but it applies also to each individual difficulty that you have to overcome. Remember that every individual problem that you have to face is but a tiny model, as it were, of the great problem of overcoming our human belief in limitation, sickness, sin, and death that is called in theology the fall of man. When some great problem or trouble comes into your life, you are, figuratively speaking, thrown into a pit of lions, and many fearful hearts have felt that this is indeed a very graphic description of the state of mind that they have experienced. Now let us look for the key to the story, and we shall find it here in verse 10. Daniel had acquired the habit of prayer. Daniel was a man who practiced the presence of God, not now and again, but constantly and regularly. This verse is very illuminating. We are told that Daniel knew that the warrant for his arrest was signed. When you are working and praying regularly along the right lines, you will always get to know anything which it is necessary that you should know. You will not be taken by surprise. Daniel knew that trouble was pending, and immediately he started praying or treating about it. He did not pronounce an affirmation once or twice and expect it to work, like an incantation. He prayed, clearing up his consciousness 3 times a day, his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem. Of course, the chamber is the secret place of Jesus or one's consciousness. Jerusalem is always the highest part of man's nature or personality, short of the actual realization of God. And so Daniel, 3 times a day, turned in thought to God and raised his thought as high as he possibly could. No one can do more than this. It is a mistake to think that you must get a wonderfully vivid realization of spirit in order to overcome any difficulty. Prayer will get you out of your difficulty whether you get any realization or not. You can always open your window toward Jerusalem. Whether you ascend Mount Zion, which is the realization of God himself, does not lie in your hands. The turning to Jerusalem does. In the same verse, it says, as he did aforetime. This tells us that Daniel was in the habit of thus praying scientifically. Some people pray only when they are in trouble, and then naturally they do not find it easy to get any sort of contact. One would not expect to practice on the piano only occasionally and yet play well on any desired occasion. Daniel made a regular practice of prayer and meditation 3 times a day. And when the dark hour came, this practice stood by him. He knew beforehand that trouble was coming. He probably knew almost exactly what it would be. And he met it by working steadily on his own consciousness in order to get rid of fear. He probably succeeded in doing this even before his arrest and was able to rejoice in victory well before the victory itself made its appearance. Of course, the real causes of all our troubles lie within ourselves. The only enemies we have to overcome in the long run are our own fears, doubts, selfishness, and so forth. These are typified by King Darius and the plotters. All your enemies are within yourself. A man's enemies shall be those of his own household. Darius represents, in particular, our belief in the power of the external world to limit or injure us. He represents none of the things that are usually called evil, but rather our limiting belief in the fixed and unchangeable character of outer things that are in themselves good. The truth is that no outer conditions have any power in themselves, no outer laws need bind us when we appeal to the supreme Christ law of divine freedom and harmony. But we do not know, or we forget this great truth, and so we go on believing in and submitting to all kinds of supposed laws of limitation. We believe that we are too old to do something that we could very well do. We believe that a certain climate can adversely affect our bodies, when in truth it has no such power. I knew a man in London who was working for the municipal government, a service which is swathed in red tape and vexatious restrictions of every kind. Feeling this fact acutely, he remained in a subordinate position for 3 years through being under the impression that his qualifications did not admit him to a certain higher grade, the work of which he knew he could do very well. After these 3 years, he learned accidentally that there was in fact no regulation such as he had supposed to prevent his holding such a position, and he promptly applied for it and was appointed with a considerable increase in salary. This is an example of a belief in our limitation, which in reality could have been overcome at any moment. It is a good example of Darius. The supposed rule concerning qualifications was not even supposedly an evil thing like dishonesty, deceit, or murder, but a rule, good in intention, to ensure the appointment of suitable people. The plotters represent essentially evil things, such as the above-mentioned sins, and of course every man has to reckon with these too. The law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not, is a splendid expression of our usual notion of these outer limitations as being impossible to overcome, of there being things and conditions that we just have to put up with. There is a well-known picture of Daniel in the lion's den, which was certainly painted by an inspired artist. Most of my readers will know it, and I always keep a copy of it in my room. Daniel is shown not looking at the lions, but turning his back on them. What a lesson in scientific prayer or treatment, what I have elsewhere called the golden key. The more we think over any difficulty, the more we amplify it, and staring at our lions causes them to grow and grow until they are as big as elephants. Daniel is shown looking upward toward the light, a graphic representation of the practice of the presence. And the lions, instead of looking ferocious or angry, seem good-humored enough as they stroll about or stand watching him curiously. Those who have had much to do with wild animals in their native jungle always insist that no wild animal will attack a man who is not afraid of it. In India, many stories are told of true yogis, that is, those who follow the Rajaj or royal yoga, which is the search for reunion with God and not just the acquiring of the power to play tricks on the etheric plane. Living among tigers and other beasts of prey in perfect safety. And the Bible itself tells us that a time will come when the lion shall lie down with the lamb, because man has gotten fear and hatred and jealousy and condemnation out of his own heart and has thereby changed the whole moral and spiritual climate of this planet. When you are in trouble, you are Daniel in the lion's den. The lions will seem terribly ferocious, but pray until fear has begun to go. Keep knowing the truth in the face of all appearances, and you will come out of the lion's den safe and sound without a single scratch, as Daniel did. Nay more, You will come out stronger and better for the ordeal, because no problem that we meet in the light of truth ever leaves us where it found us. Every problem thus overcome is a definite step upward in the growth of the soul. It is significant, is it not, that being unable to accuse Daniel of any of the ordinary transgressions, his enemies proved beyond a shadow of doubt that Daniel was a man who declined to worship, to believe in or trust any power but God. In the sight of the world, this was an indictable offense. But in the light of truth, it was shown to be Daniel's salvation. The longer one continues in the truth teaching, the more convinced he becomes of the fact that this is a mental world, and that man's dominion lies within his own mentality. When once we have grasped this fact clearly and have determined to put it into operation in our lives, it seems as though our difficulties were over, and theoretically this could be the case. Practically, however, it calls for the most rigid and persistent watchfulness on our part. If we are not to be constantly straying from the true path of correct thought, watch and pray, said Jesus, knowing how subtle are the temptations to step aside into old errors. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance, said an ancient sage, and never was this truer than in the life of the soul. If you really want to demonstrate health, happiness, and true prosperity, and every student of truth knows that it is his duty to demonstrate these things as soon as he possibly can, you must set aside a definite time every day for prayer and meditation, and for checking up upon your own daily conduct and demonstration or want of demonstration. You must conduct the affairs of your soul in a businesslike way. Too many religious people fail to realize that the business of spiritual growth calls for order, method, and intelligent organization, just as much as does any commercial business or engineering enterprise or any other important activity, if it is to be a success. So great is the power of prayer that not only will it get you out of any difficulty, but the things in yourself which produced that difficulty will be utterly destroyed forever, with all their associated thoughts and fears. And all consequences or collateral effects that might arise from the problem itself will be taken care of too. Quote, and break all their bones in pieces, or ever they came at the bottom of the den. End quote. There is no end to a prayer. It echoes on forever in your soul. Long after the visible demonstration has been made and forgotten, the prayer that produced it continues to work for your spiritual advancement, for the creative power of a God thought is unlimited and eternal. End of section. Please do hit that like button, and let's head over to the next video as we continue the reading here of the book titled Power Through Constructive Thinking by Emmet Fox.